We're about to get into a conversation that affects us all. Yes, indeed. And I've got an amazing panel, and I'd love to introduce them right now as we get into the conversation. Kumbuka is Mjadala, Court of Public Opinion. And the question I'm asking, and a lot of the international community is asking, is there an all-out genocide going down in Ethiopia? And in my panel, I've got Coletta Wanjohi. Coletta, good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you?
Super. And then we have Maeza. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, thank you.
All right. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start with Coletta. You had a chance to go into Ethiopia, and the global community is saying that there's something happening in Ethiopia. What is happening in Ethiopia?
Okay, so what's happening in Ethiopia is there has been a conflict that at first started as a political conflict, lakini sasa imechukua humanitarian angle. That means mvutano wa kisiasa has turned into internally displaced people. It has turned into accusations of rape.
Yeah.
It has turned into accusations that displacement. People have been forced to leave home. And what's happening is, in simple terms, is the current prime minister, ambaye aliingia in power in 2018, amezozana na the previous controlling party, which is the Tigray People's Liberation Front.
Yeah.
So alipoingia in power, they thought that angeendelea tu according to how they ran things. Lakini alipokuja, he started to try and make some difference and all that. But also kuna mvutano, a historical mvutano.
Yeah.
So what we are seeing is between 2018 na saa hii wamekuwa wakivutana, then tukamuona in November 4th akisema kwamba there's a major barracks in the northern region. So aliingia akasema kwamba that the Tigray defense forces that is based in the northern region waliingia wakajaribu kuiba vitu in the barracks and all that, and trying to disarm people. So that became a problem. Na hapo ndio he got a chance to enter the northern region na akaingia na majeshi yake. So shida ambayo iko kubwa zaidi ni kwamba alipopeleka majeshi ya taifa sasa huko, people are blaming and saying that part ya majeshi ambayo alitumia ni kutoka kwa neighboring region. Just like maybe you live in Nakuru, then Eritrea is another issue.
Yeah.
But it's just like you live in Nakuru, then they bring for you forces from maybe Kisii, which is a neighboring region, for example, ama kutoka Nairobi, and you've been having issues with these people. So ikakuwa more of ethnic core. So it was easy for the guys on the other side to beat this guy's hard.
Yeah.
And also then we had the Eritrean thing. Sasa aliingisha pia Eritrean forces. So imekuwa a very mixture ingine tu mbaya, tuseme mixture mbaya, and we are seeing people displaced. The UN is saying we are heading to 1 million people who have been displaced. Watu wana chakula. And the biggest problem I think was in the last 4 months, between November and 4 months after November, wakati vita ilianza, he didn't allow humanitarian agencies to go in. So people were literally kind of starved for the past 3 months after the conflict, and that's when we started hearing now the international community saying open up, and also for media too. So that's kind of the confusion.
Wow. So, okay, first things first, talking about, say, food, because for me, this story, we've been following it from last year. There's been scanty reports on what exactly is going down in Ethiopia. And when you search online, try to see, everything is in Amharic, all right? And I don't have any Amharic friends. It's why Gide is here today. And I know that you've been very vocal on what's happening in Ethiopia. There are reports that sexual violence is being used against Ethiopians. This isn't the first time when in conflict, sexual violence has been used against Ethiopians. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's important to differentiate between Ethiopia as a country and the group of people that are being exterminated, Tigrayans.
Yeah.
So Tigray, it is a region within Ethiopia. It's found located on the northernmost part of Ethiopia, and the total population of Tigrayans could range from 6 million to 7 million. And so these Tigrayans, they're represented by their political party, a political party that they voted for called TPLF, or the Tigray Liberation Front, right? So there has been a tension between the federal government of Ethiopia as well as the regional government of Tigray for the past 3 years. And this tension has been brewing. There has been a lot of, very derogatory terms that were used by the federal government in order to dehumanize the people of Tigray. And as a result, now you see a full-blown genocide happening in Tigray, Ethiopia. I say this Yeah, I
Kind of.
say this because genocide is nothing but it's an intentional killing of a group of people. So the intent has been proved by eyewitness accounts.
Yeah.
Some of them the rape survivors. As you said, this is not the first time where Tigrayans have been exposed to a weaponized rape. In previous, civil wars, our mothers have been exposed to rape that was made to not only to violate their bodies, but also to terrorize the entire population into subjugation, right? So this have happened previously, and now it's happening. There was
I just want to jump in there. You said that this was started. The angst was started by, or this fight was started by the government. But you also have Ethiopia's government saying that this all started after last year. There was supposed to be a general election. And then because the TPLF and Tigrayans decided to have their own election when it had been postponed, and the national government said, we're not going to go carry out an election. Let's help Kenyans understand. And I want Coletta, I want Coletta to jump in here. You've gone into Ethiopia. What are the challenges? Because I know Kenya also faces what do you call ethnic, sort of tribal divisions. What is the one thing that you see when TPLF and Tigray decided to have their elections? Why wasn't the rest of the country also with them?
Okay, so what happened is because of COVID hit everybody, right?
Yeah.
And the elections were supposed to be there last year. So the National Electoral Board and the government said, then we need to postpone this because of COVID-19.
Yeah.
So they tagged it to COVID-19.
Yeah.
But the argument from the Tigray and the Tigray region was, we can still hold elections despite the pandemic. We can still do it in a more organized way and all that.
Yeah.
So what they did was they also tried to prove that we would have done this election. So their angle was trying to say, because remember, Prime Minister was Saibado hajakuwa elected. He's still in a transitional period, right?
Yeah.
He took over after the previous Prime Minister, Haile Mariam Desalegn.
Yeah.
Alikuwa amefanya 2 years. So this current Prime Minister held on for the next 3 years, but now it has been extended.
Yeah.
And I think the strongest voice came from the northern region, where they said, you do not need to extend your transitional period to fanya hii election. Nona.
Yeah.
Then akasema hapana. So the National Electoral Board spoke out and said, tuko na enough reasons that could allow us not to do elections. So we cannot do elections. But the people in the north said, you know what, we will do elections and we will show you that we can do elections. No. So Apo, then the government kind of took it that it's kind of
Defiance.
Madarao, defiance.
Yeah.
And I think kind of gave the Prime Minister, because for long, he really wanted to put control on in the northern region, but it was hard for him because the northern region had control. They've got the Northern Command. They've got the voice. They've been in power for maybe 27 years. So they had a stronger voice. So it depends on how you look at it. Kuna wale ambao wanasema waziri mkuu alitafuta, he looked for a reason to get into the northern region. Unaona? So you defy the elections. Then apart from that, then he comes and says you have attacked the barrack, and okay, that becomes a national security issue. Unaona?
Wow.
So there was that thing. So they were looked at defiant. I think they were defiant people, you see. But they kind of produced their own regulations. Wanasema kwamba if we skip this election season, then we're going to have confusion, and we're extending your term, the transitional term, for no reason, you see. So it's a political pool that now, unfortunately, has got now a human face, and that's why we are hearing so much noise, and that's the sad bit of it. If it had remained a political issue, then it's okay. In Kenya, we do a lot of political talk. So now we pull, we push and pull a lot politically. Then people go back home, saying that I told him, and this is what. But there, the political thing got a human face. Now it's the humanitarian angle now that's becoming, like my sister was saying, we have about 7 million people in the region of Tigray, and if you have about 4 million people talking about hunger now, that's a really big deal, So the political angle kind of gets diluted, and ni utu sasa.
Coletta, Wanjohi, Maeza Gabremedhin, we're speaking about the conflict that's happening in Ethiopia, and you can hear that it has taken a human rights, a human angle where a lot of Ethiopians are facing starvation. And by the way, the reports I'm getting, and I want us to get into a short break, and then we'll come back and talk about this. I want to take the angle of Prime Minister Abiy is a Nobel Peace Prize holder, and not only that, there is conversation, reports that hunger is being used as a tool, as a weapon. So I want you to think about that. We're gonna get back into the music. When we come back, remember, we're trying to find out what exactly is happening in Ethiopia. Is there a genocide unfolding?
Catch the vibes on air and online.
29 minutes past 8 a.m. We are having a conversation about Ethiopia, not in the past like Sydney Salmon. We're talking about Ethiopia in 2021 because according to international reports, according to reports from journalists who've been in Ethiopia and from activists, there is a humanitarian crisis going down. And we wanted to have a deeper understanding of what exactly is going on. So welcome back, ladies, as we have this conversation. If you're just tuning in for the first time, we have Maeza Gide, which I think you should tell us your name now. I feel like I'm massacring it.
You're doing great.
I'm doing
Maeza Gide.
Gide. All right, and we also got Coletta Wanjohi, who's a journalist. I saw you on PBS. That's how I reached out. I remember I told you that.
Great.
Yeah, I love the article that you did,
Thank
and
you.
it was so informative because for the 4 months that I've been hearing about this, strife, there was barely any news except in Amharic, and I gotta be honest, I had not met Gide at that point, so there was no translation. Let's talk about the Prime Minister winning a Nobel Peace Prize to finding himself in a war that he himself has said that it's gone on much longer than and has spread much farther than he actually anticipated. Gide, what was the straw that broke the camel's back? What triggered the fighting? Because even forces from Asmara have joined the battle.
Yeah, so what really triggered the genocidal war that's happening now is the postponement of the national election that was due to happen in late 2019. The Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, he has never been elected. He was nominated by the party in order to prepare the country for an upcoming election. But like most dictatorial governments do, he used COVID-19 as an excuse and unilaterally decided to postpone the election. So the regional government of Tigray, not in defiance, according to its rights enshrined within the Ethiopian constitution, held their own regional election, a very successful election where over 2.8 million Tigrayans voted for the TPLF.
All
so
right.
this is
I
really
just want to
what
jump in there. I want to jump in
transpired
there.
the war.
So you're saying a region decided to hold their own election where the national government has said we have to postpone the election. Isn't that open defiance?
It's not, because Ethiopia has a federal government system, a governance where regions enjoy their own autonomy to elect their own local representatives. So you have two levels of election in Ethiopia. You will have an election where you would elect your local representatives, and then there would be a nationwide election. So the federal government decided to unilaterally, without getting the consensus of the whole country, decided to, postpone the election. In the names of COVID-19. However, the Ethiopian, Prime Minister continued to congregate people to plant trees and to have some other festivities where there were so many people, packed in one millennia or in one hall. So the issue wasn't really COVID-19. The issue was you have the Tigray people who want their right self-administration respected. And you have the federal government who doesn't want that right. He wants to introduce a new form of governance, a unitary system where nations and nationalities, ethnic groups would not have the right to speak their language, the right to exercise their culture, and to be administered by people that look like them and speak their language. So this is really where the conflict is coming from.
Let me take you back. In 2019, when Abiy came into power, this was unanimously agreed upon that this was the guy to unite the nation. And he made it very clear that one of the things that he's going to be doing was, a centralized sort of government. Where did he lose the plot? Or where did, the no, we're not going in that direction with you happen?
Yeah, so when he first came to power, everyone was happy because he came to power because there was grievances from the Oromo community. Oromo are the biggest ethnic groups within Ethiopia. They have been protesting for years and years. So he came to power in order, to accommodate the questions and demands that were made by that
and he's
particular
from the
ethnic
Oromo
group. So he is, and he's from Oromo, and this was a very good political move in order, to smoothen the democratization process of the country. However, you cannot force, ethnic groups to be one forcefully. You have to respect the beauty that is within diversity. So you cannot really force people to speak Amharic, to practice an Amhara culture, to practice an Amhara, identity. People should have the right to be who they are and remain Ethiopians. So he started losing ethnic groups, particularly the people of Tigray, when he decided to unilaterally again dissolve a political coalition that was working. It was in Ethiopia for the past 27 years, decided to block the road connecting Tigray to the rest of the country, decided to block investment opportunities that were coming from abroad. For example, there were Chinese investors who wanted to invest in Tigray, but the federal government wouldn't let them go to Tigray.
Wow.
So this, and also the federal government started arresting Tigrayan politicians, only Tigrayan politicians. So it kind of became a witch hunt for Tigrayans. So this is when Tigrayan scholars, intellectuals, the general population, including myself, started, questioning the motives behind Abiy Ahmed's, quote unquote reform agendas. That's when we started saying, okay, he wants to create a pan-Ethiopian, an Ethiopia that doesn't accommodate the differences we have as a group of people. So that's when we started questioning, and that's when tensions kind of brew. And then there came COVID-19. The federal government wouldn't give PPE and other essential equipment that are very imperative in safeguarding people to Tigray. So Tigray didn't have access to PPE and other things. So this kind of made tensions really bad. And then on November 4th, the federal government shut down all communication channels, no internet, no phone connectivity, and then waged a war in the middle of the dark. And that's why you see over 4.5 million people are facing a man-made famine, and then 2.5 million are internally displaced as we speak.
Now, Coletta, you've been into Ethiopia. Of course, one of the big questions was, why is there no, journalists being allowed to go into the country, to see for themselves? If really there's nothing going down, why is journalists not being allowed to go in? And then you got a chance to go in. What did you see?
Because I actually work in Ethiopia, but now we're based in Addis Ababa, and for 4 months we could not be allowed to go to the northern region to report anything, right? And that became, and many people had made requests and said would like to go in both local and international media. Lakini serikali ikasema hapana. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges. Serikali ilipo block humanitarian agencies plus journalists, you see. So story ilikuwa inatoka for the and I remember from 4th November, all we were getting was several press conferences kutoka serikali. Then it reached a point, and then writing a story was very hard, because then we cannot be writing a story about the government has said this, has said this, has said this. We need the other side. So it became a problem, and we saw some fatigue, especially kutoka kwa international media. People stopped reporting in serikali nasema, because it was one way, and people kept saying, can you allow us to go inside? Now wakakata. I mean, they literally refused for the first 3 months. So nobody knows what happened in that region for the first 3 months, from November up to maybe around February, end of February. We were allowed in March, right? And we went in with the military. So going with the military, that, okay, of course, outside they tell you, what, when you go in, you can feel free, you can do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, then I spent there 4 days. We were supposed to do 7 days. We spent 4 days. But the first 2 days, we were going where the military wanted us to go. So we're like, okay, we need to balance our story. Fine, we will do what the government feels. Okay, government is also says it's also a party. It was affected. So we'd go to the barracks, we went to the military hospital, and all that. But then we're not seeing the human face of this conflict. And that's why we insisted. And then on the third day, we got access to the IDP camps, and the IDP camps are generally schools. Schools, because now schools have been held. I mean, have been postponed because of COVID, and now with the conflict. So people are being held in schools, and you go to those schools, and that's when you see the conflict. You see. And that's when you see the conflict. You see, it's different when we talk about the political aspect. The political aspect is up here. We can talk about it in our sitting rooms. We can talk about it on social media. But when you go to those IDP camps, then you see all these shows. You see all these old people who were planted and could not harvest. An old woman who you're interviewing. I interviewed women, and there's a woman who was constantly crying because she said, "Look at me. I have children. Some of them ran to Sudan. I don't know where they are. I ran here with my own children, with some few. Others said I had a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, but they had to walk. We walked for like 7 days. We hop onto any truck, inatusaidia kufika a certain point, then we go. People have all these stories. So when you see that, when you see these people sharing one classroom, they're sleeping about 50 people. So that's when you really see, not even maybe, the conflict or the operation, the military operation, the government calls it the military operation, went haywire, you see?
Yeah.
And now they have to bring it back. But how? Yeah. How is the problem? Because people are talking the word starvation, like we're saying. Because they're saying for the past 3 months, hawakupata anything. All they are getting from government was maybe 15 kilos of wheat, and some kilos of beans. And they keep saying, the people we interviewed, I was there in March, and they kept saying, we thank the people of Mekelle. Mekelle is the city now of the region, the capital city. Yeah. They are saying, thank you. May God bless the people of this city because they kept us alive. They gave us what they had.
Wow.
Now we're seeing humanitarian agencies going in, but that's the challenge.
I want you to hold that thought. Ladies, we're going to take another short break, and then we'll come back and talk about the African equation, because we do have a union called African Union. We do have a seat at the UN Security Council. How is that going? And many stories. So hold that thought, and we'll be right back, guys. We are talking about what's happening in Ethiopia, and you're getting first-hand information from Ethiopia, and also from activists who are actively seeking for the world to pay attention to what is happening in Ethiopia.
Catch the vibes on air and online.
We're about to wrap up this conversation on what's happening in Ethiopia. And guys, do remember you can speak to us using that hashtag Kwambox on Vibes. Now, guys, the population of Ethiopia, I mean, in all respects, Ethiopia is one of those countries that's, its economy is growing. Right now, Ethiopia is having a conflict, I always tell my listeners, with Egypt and Sudan over the Great Renaissance Dam. And the biggest question is, this issue is happening in a corner there in Ethiopia, and Eritrea has joined the battle. How?
Yeah, if I may. So, when the Ethiopian federal government decided to wage a war against its own people, the first thing Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed did is to make friendship with the Eritrean dictator Isaias Afwerki, a dictator who has been, tormenting his own people ever since they got their own independence. So both of them joined effort. They collaborated and formed a bloc in order to subjugate the people of Tigray. So Eritrea has been involved in the war against Tigray ever since 3 years ago, right after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed came to power. Both countries have been working together in order to exterminate the people of Tigray. So as an extension of that effort, now you have Eritrean troops actively involving in the war. They're currently in Tigray, destroying factories, destroying public infrastructure, looting properties, burning crops of farmers, and most importantly, massacring people everywhere, all across Tigray, including Aksum. Aksum is the holy city. It is, it's a city that hosts, it's home to the Ark of Covenant. So Eritrean troops and Ethiopian National Army and Amhara militias, all of them have been massacring people in that particular city, but also throughout Tigray. They're also engaged in the weaponized hunger, whereby they block aid workers from entering into Tigray, they loot crops and burn them, and they're also participating in the weaponized rape, where they rape children, young girls as young as 5 years old, and grandmothers as old as 89 years old. Mothers are being raped by Eritrean troops and the Ethiopian National Army. This is also one of the reasons why the Ethiopian government was so hesitant in letting international journalists from entering into Tigray, because they wanted to hide as much as they could the existence and presence of Eritrean troops in Tigray. But because the pressure was so high, finally they gave in and they gave very limited access to Tigray.
Coletta, you've been to this region. We've seen right now, because of the international pressure, the word like genocide being, used. It has, even Abiy himself has been interviewed, and he said atrocities have been committed by both sides. Both troops. Coletta, you've seen the troops. You've seen the troops in the region. Coletta, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you very well.
Yes.
So we've seen the troops. So if you go to the
my
Tigray
question
region,
is, I wanted to ask you,
yeah.
what is the average age of when you look at these troops? What age gani?
Unajua Ethiopians wako na mwili kidogo, so it's really hard kujua miaka yao if you just look at them.
Yeah, because
but the reality is there are very many young looking soldiers in Mekelle.
Yeah.
If you go to Mekelle, the capital city, it's more like a military barracks now. There are all these Bifaros passing and all these artillery, big vehicles. You really feel that you're in a war.
Yeah.
And that's the capital city of the area. But they're young looking people, you see.
Yeah.
But of course, the government says all this eligible age and all that. It's really hard to tell Eritrean troops when you're in Mekelle. We just got to go to Mekelle, which is the capital city. So probably if you go maybe to other regions, then maybe you would see them. But I don't know how easy it would be because there are these allegations that they are wearing other uniforms, like for example, Ethiopian uniforms and all that. But now I think what we have is the government has accepted. I mean, after the pressure from the international community, the government has accepted that Eritrean troops are there. Prime Minister says it was because of national security they had to defend their own borders. That's left for it's questionable, left for argument's sake. But what is happening is bad, you know. And I know you mentioned the African Union. The African Union sits inside Addis Ababa.
Yeah,
you know that.
Yeah,
the African Union sits inside Addis Ababa.
What exactly is the African Union doing about this?
I don't know. You see, there's a challenge of sovereignty. Countries flag up the sovereignty flag, and say we are sovereign. So the Constitution of the African Union says we respect the sovereignty of a country. Yeah. So it depends on how strong you are in terms of speaking and lobbying for yourself. And but there's also criticism that the African Union probably has not spoken as loudly as it should have done. Yeah. Maybe they're just doing meetings. I don't know how the meetings are progressing and all that. But we are getting a lot of force from the United Nations. Yeah. We're getting a lot of force from individual countries, especially the donors. Yeah. And I think that's what is making, that has allowed at least humanitarian agencies to go in, that has allowed journalists to go in partly. And how long it will take for this whole thing to end, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Because
that's the big question.
Looks like it gets complicated all the time. Yeah.
All right. Maeza, you are an activist using your voice in America to speak about this. I've seen there's a lot of protests that are going to be going down in different cities. What is the end game?
Yeah, the end game is, I think, very important to mention that I am from Tigray. So I'm not just an activist. I am a person who's directly impacted by this. I have lost so many family members and I still don't know where most of my family members are.
I'm so
sorry. I haven't heard from them. Yeah, I haven't heard from them in the past 5 months because most of my family members are not in Mekelle where there is, phone connectivity. They are in different parts of the region and there still is no access to Tigray. So I think it's important to put that out there. But in all of the activism we're doing, in all of the plea that we're doing, the protests, the campaigns, our end goal is, first of all, bring about, cessation of hostilities. There needs to be an immediate cessation of hostility. And in addition to that, there needs to be unfettered and unrestricted humanitarian access, not only to parts of Tigray, but to the whole Tigray, so that all the 4.5 million people that are starving could have access to life-saving food and medicine. The other end goal is restoration of the elected government of Tigray, because our people have elected, they voted for TPLF. They want TPLF to govern them, and it's not up to the federal government or Eritrea to change this, because democracy means to have the right to elect your governing organs and to be administered by them. So the people of Tigray have already voted for TPLF, and if any government has an issue with that, there is a democratic way of changing that. You do not use bullets to convince people to change their minds. You don't do that. So these are some of the end goals. But also, you were talking earlier about African Union. African Union has not only been not doing enough, they have been supporting the genocide. They have been doing this by repeating the federal government's propaganda and by supporting the dictator regime in Addis Ababa. To me, African Union is about Pan-Africanism. And Pan-Africanism is not about a state. It's not about a government. It's about the African citizens. It's about protecting Africans wherever they are. But the African Union chose to support a dictator regime in Addis Ababa instead of holding it accountable and making sure that innocent lives don't perish in the dark. So African Union has once again failed the people of like Africans, aka Tigrans. It's under their watch that Tigrans are being exterminated, and that's why we're pushing for the UN, because if African Union is not going to do the right thing, then the UN has to step in, intervene, and make sure that there is a cessation of hostilities, and that all the perpetrators of the crimes are held accountable and face justice.
Ladies, do you see any ceasefire happening as we wrap this up? Is there a ceasefire going to happen anytime soon?
I think it depends. It's a long shot because right now the government has already declared the Tigray People's Liberation Front a criminal gang. The parliament has said it's an outlawed sect. So I don't know. The federal government would not be happy, or has even said, the prime minister said he cannot sit with the TPLF to talk anything, because once it has been declared like that, then it becomes more complicated. I don't know how the ceasefire will happen. I don't know. It's being pushed for by the United Nations, but I don't know, because even we've got the federal government on one side. The other side that is fighting does not have a face. It's really hard. I don't know. So who will be the leaders who've already been declared as outlawed?
Yeah.
So I don't know what will happen. I don't know. Maybe we'll just keep pushing so that the government ends it.
It's possible if global leaders and global citizens do the right thing. Meaning, if Western countries, particularly, these countries with a lot of money that is being funneled to Ethiopia, sanction Ethiopia. If they sanction Eritrea, then ceasefire could happen. If all Africans come together and put pressure on their local leaders, again, sanction Ethiopia and force the Ethiopian government into coming to the discussion table, ceasefire is possible, because the Tigray government is ready and have been ready for cessation of hostilities from the get-go. It's the federal government of Ethiopia that continues to ignore, calls for cessation of hostilities and national dialogue up until today. So if European Union and African Union, as well as the UN, sanction Eritrea and Ethiopia, ceasefire would be possible.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time, Maeza. I know it's midnight in where you are. Coletta, najua uko hapa at the Horn of Africa. Continue, breaking it down for us, what's going on there. I appreciate you. And I know that our listeners who've been listening have a broad understanding of what exactly is going down. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kwambox.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Cheers. All right, 5 minutes to 9 a.m., guys. We've had that conversation about what's happening in Ethiopia. Umejua ni nini inafanyika. Sasa, we mwenyewe sasa, it's always important to know how we get into this conflict. And considering, we grew up hearing, Ethiopia is in conflict with Eritrea, and then now their economy is growing, and then boom, there's something else happening. It begs the question, Africa, what are we going to do about this?
Catch the vibes on air and online.